What was I doing with my glasses and my hair? I can't in my hat, but
Hannah, here we are on the eve of another European Team Championships. How excited are you to pull on that Scotland shirt again and represent your country?
yeah, obviously very excited. Anytime you get to play for your country is an honour, whether it be Scotland or GB&I. And, it's just very fun, getting to play with other girls, and for some of them it's their first cap. For me, it's not quite my first, but, it's just always an honour, and I just love competing for my country.
To say it's not your first cap is an understatement. You're a veteran of these events, the Europeans in particular. What have you enjoyed about competing in them over the years?
I think it's just it's a team aspect. You get to play with 5 other Scottish players who, I've kind of grown up with. I know them all pretty well, and just that team aspect that is something that's just so great in amateur golf. Playing with other girls who are just quite as passionate as yourself about it, and getting to do it while having the solitaire on your chest and representing your country, there's just no greater honour.
And over the years, you've been in successful Scottish teams that have gone quite far, semi-finals and things like that. Is there a bit of you that wants to sign off from your team amateur career with a good performance in the Europeans this year?
Yeah, I'd love to. I think it is an honour to represent your country. It is great to pull on the jumper with the salter on it, but I think we're always measured by our success, and it would be awesome to cap it off in style. There's no reason why we can't play well next week. There's no reason why we can't win next week, to be honest. And so it's just going out there and taking care of the business, but then also kind of keeping our heads up and hopefully have a really good result. That would be awesome.
In an individual sport, it seems strange sometimes to come into that team environment, but it's one that you seem to thrive in. We saw it at the Curtis Cup. We saw it recently at the Vagliano. What is it about these team events that brings out the best in you as an individual golfer, as part of a team unit?
Yeah, I think, I'm just very competitive, and I just love the game. And so just moments like that, I think it's one thing to play for yourself, but, just until you play for a team that represents your country, it's just completely different. And it's an honour, and obviously I've had some great experiences, and the Curtis Cup is probably the peak of all of it, to be honest with you. And just, I think just seeing the emotions of that week, you're literally playing for, your other teammates who, you just really want to win for them. It's one thing wanting to win for yourself, but wanting to win for them. And you see that they also want to do the same for you, and it's so special. And you've got 7 other girls who are just pulling for you, and they really, really want you to win. And so that's just something that's really cool. And it's the same next week at Europeans. I want all of the other girls to play well, and they all want me to play well, and that's just something that's really special.
How do you temper the emotions? It's one thing to get wound up and to get excited and to get pumped up for a team event, but at the same time, you've got to stay ice cool, you've got to focus on your game. How do you manage to marry the two sides of that together?
Something I've definitely got better at. I think you would have seen at the Curtis Cup last year that, I got quite pumped up. That's something that I normally do, more so when I'm playing with someone, because I like to pump them up too, less so in singles, because I feel like, I almost get too pumped up and then I can't maintain it myself. But it's something I've got better at, and it just sort of comes out of me in match play. I don't know where it is, I don't know what it is, but but it's definitely just I like to think of it as like a perspective thing. Just having kind of your feet on the ground and just allowing that to take over, and especially playing in singles. We'll have a bit of foursomes next week hopefully, but playing in singles, it's just trying to keep your head up. And the other thing is that you've got hopefully a girl playing in front of you and behind. And so just, attitude and body language is really important for them seeing you on the golf course, and seeing that energy there too.
Tell us about the mind games at a team event. How does that affect things? Are you becoming a bit of an old pro at that? You know what buttons to press at what time?
To be honest with you, I would never try to use mind games. I think, in a match play setting, you're always trying to almost seem unbreakable to your opponent. I think it's just that's where attitude is really important, because I think if they see you with their head down, they can sometimes think that they've got you and they've won. So it's just that's a really important thing. But I think the most important thing is that when I focus on what I'm doing, I can really be beaten. it's when I let other things get into my bubble, and that's when, things start to creep in. So I think when I just stay focused on me, that's where I can thrive.
This is going to be your last team event for Scotland as an amateur. You've had an amazing amateur career. When you reflect on the decade or so representing Scotland at girls level and then at women's level, what are the things that stand out for you?
Yeah, it's been an honour. I think I was pretty young when I first got my first cap, and it was just, I just remember being so excited. I remember being that, young girl that was looking up to the players in the ladies team and who wanted to be them, and just so much excitement. And it is kind of crazy sitting here now reflecting on that, because it seems like very long ago, but also the experiences and the things I've learned along the way, it's been quite incredible. And obviously very grateful for these experiences that Scottish Golf have given me, and the opportunities that they've allowed me to have. But it's just that, as I've said, it's team golf. You just can't beat it. And I know that pro golf is more individual, other than, hopefully we'll make it to Solheim Cup or something one day, but majority of the time it is just individual, and it's really those team experiences where I've got those teammates by my side, and that's really what I'll cherish.
When you look back at pictures of you as an 11, 12, 13-year-old playing for Scotland, what goes through your mind when you think back to those early days?
What was I doing with my glasses and my hair? I can't, in my hat, but it's part of growing up, right? You always look back at old pictures and think, what were you doing? But I really just think about the passion and the love I had for the game. I would have done anything to have played in a Curtis Cup, or to have played it for Europeans and the ladies team, or just those sort of things. And it's just been really, really special, and I just don't really want to take any of it for granted, to be honest.
You talked about when you were younger looking up to women who were in the women's team, and maybe even some people who'd turned pro. You find yourself in that situation now. We've got some youngsters in the girls squad. You think of young Stella Walters, who's only 12, 13, Carla McDonald, who's obviously coming through and starting to make a little bit of a name for herself. What advice would you give to these young women who are making the same way in the game that you've already, that path you've already been down? Yeah,
I think, for me, a big part of what I've been doing is leave it better than I found it. Whether that's Scottish golf over in America at university, Curtis Cup teams, whatever. And so I just, I would always love to, be that source of information for them if I can, or advice or anything like that. And actually went to Vagliano last week and flew with Carly and tried to give her a couple pieces of advice here or there. But, I think just the main thing I'd say is just take it all in, soak it all in. It really is the best days of your life. Playing for teams and traveling and all those sort of things and representing your country, it is no greater honour. But just soak it all in, because hopefully for them at one point they'll be sitting here like me 10 or maybe more years later, and just looking back at it all. And there are times where I wish I would have just enjoyed the moment more. I think you can get so wrapped up in what you shoot. It's like you shoot 70 or you shoot 80, it really doesn't make much difference, and it's not going to change the trajectory of their career. And I think for me, I would have loved to maybe not get so wrapped up in the result and maybe just enjoy the moments a bit more.
As one door closes with your amateur career passing, another exciting door opens as you step into professional ranks. What are your ambitions in the game going forward from here, Hannah?
Just honestly to be the best I can be. I think it's pretty awesome seeing some pros on tour right now. Bob McIntyre, Gemma Dryborough. They're just smashing it, to be honest, and it's pretty cool to see. And I just want to represent Scotland really well, and just kind of do myself proud. And I don't feel like I need to do much different to what I've been doing already in the amateur game. I think I just go with my game. I know it's good enough. I know I've competed against a lot of the people on tour right now in the amateur game, and yeah, just want to go do myself proud and keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, listen, it's been a blast having you part of the Scottish Golf setup for the last decade or so. Good luck with what happens next in your career. We're all behind you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.